Hello there, this is Dr. Jimmy again, and you can't see me at all, can you? Maybe it gets a little bit better this way. Oh look, there I am. Oh look, I'm all sporty. Look, I'm wearing a Orlando City Soccer Club t-shirt. Can you see that? There, I can move that. You can see it if I put my hand here. Silly how this sensor makes it all dark when the bright light is behind me. Unfortunately, I haven't set up any lighting to make me look more visible. Sorry about that, those of you. You just have to guess that I'm here lurking in the dark. Oh look, I do something like this and you can see me. Now I'm invisible again, how weird. Anyway, this is the fourth video, number 4, in my series on the history of Halloween Horror Nights 20 Years of Fear. Yes, and I left off the previous one after we had inadvertently summoned the demon of fear to become the icon for the event. Oh my goodness, well indeed. Well, a little bit more about fear. Okay, now fear showed up on the website, but all you could see on the website when it showed up was this big nasty gnashing teeth. Ooh, scary. What was that? So we didn't really get a good look at fear on the website. There was a television commercial which featured fear. Yes. It shows a night watchman, a security guard, going into a warehouse, a property warehouse out by the airport somewhere. Apparently there actually is such a warehouse out by an airport somewhere, and it does contain some props that were used in Halloween Horror Nights. Of course, not all the props from all the 20 previous years. Of course, some of those have been sold and other things for charity, what have you. Some have been destroyed. But if you go into the fantasy world of this video, everything from every Horror Nights and Fright Nights to 20 was all in that warehouse. How exciting. And there was that mysterious lantern itself, just sitting on a shelf. And the warehouseman there with his flashlight is very nervous, and while his back is turned, smoke comes out of the lantern and forming an apparition which attacks him. And in the smoky, apparently Fear himself was there in that smoky fog and funky smog, I guess, and attacked him. But you didn't really see Fear there. Fear was still rather invisible. Oh my goodness, what did Fear really look like? We still had no really good clue. There was a little image of his face, apparently with no eyes. We got a leak of that, but we couldn't quite see much more about him. And later on, there was a press media package sent out to members of the press who might want to learn about it in advance, and all they got was a big branding iron with a double X on it. Fear will put his mark on you. Oh, that's scary. Double X brand. Ooh, like you were a cattle or something. There's a cattle running, or a cat running around back there chasing a little ball of paper. A little piece of paper rolled into a ball, and the cat will play with it all day. You buy her an expensive toy, she'll leave it lying on the floor and ignore it completely. There you go. Funny cats. Silly animal. Anyway, getting back to where I was. Yes, the press media. And there was also a rather clever little promotional video where a lady from the news or something, where someone was talking about the event, and suddenly she becomes possessed by fear. Ooh, possession, the power of Christ compels you, but we didn't find out what fear looked like because he was inside that woman, you see. So we didn't do that. Sounds naughty. Anyway, but we didn't actually see fear yet. We wouldn't know what fear really would look like until he was revealed in the event itself. So when we actually got to Horror Nights, then we got to see Fear for the first time. They sort of very carefully were keeping his true full appearance under wraps because it would be quite impressive when we actually encountered Fear at the event, you see. That was the idea, I guess. There was another little video released that has some bearing, although we didn't know it at the time. Way over in Hollywood, California, they promoted their event of Halloween Horror Nights 2010, which had a subtitle, What Fear Fears Most. And it showed about, I believe it showed 4 young people out, no, was it 4? I think it was maybe 5 young people out in the woods. Let me think about that. I think it's 5. 5 of them out in the woods, some young boys and young girls, teenagers, and suddenly a whole bunch of horrific, monstrous beasts come running at them, and they're terrified and scream, but then those beasts just run past them and keep going, because whatever was chasing them was scarier than what they were. And they're in the woods going, what's that, what's that? And they see something, you don't know what it is, and they scream, ah! Whatever it is gets them, and we don't know what that means. And we had no idea that commercial, which got reused a couple of times, would have some sort of significant bearing on Legendary Truth a few years later. I don't think they planned it at the time, but they retconned it into the chronology of LT a couple of years later, but we wouldn't find out about that in 2010, and we had no idea then. Just mentioning it in passing. Alrighty then. Now, well, there was something else, something about fear, I think I wanted to bring up. Well, I'll get back to it. So the event itself, as I was saying, the event itself was, here's a nice guide map for you. I hope you can make it out. I can hold it like this and it should be visible. All the lovely haunted houses and scare zones as they were presented. And again, as I said that year, there were 8 haunted houses again, and all of them in the same locations they had been the previous year, 2009. And what's interesting is all 8 haunted houses were original haunted houses. They were all non-intellectual properties, not IPs. They weren't adapted directly from any particular films or movies or television programs or anything like that. It was the first time since 2005 that there were no IPs. I'm pretty sure that 2006 we had Psycho, 7 they were all movies, and 8 they had Doomsday, and 9 of course was all about movies. So yeah, it was the first time since 2005 they had all non-IP original houses. Oh, amazing. And this was part of the whole idea that they had at that time, a new age of darkness, to bring the event in this new direction, all original houses. That was their plan for the future. Of course, those plans didn't exactly hold. In the following year there was an IP, and then of course many IPs after that, because something big changed in the whole structure of Universal, but we'll get to that when we get to 21, whenever that'll be. So there were at that time at least the idea was a new age of darkness, right? And this was their attempt that year to bring that new age about. Wow. So let's get to the houses. There were 2 houses in Soundstage 23, and the first of these 2 houses was called Hades, Gates of Ruin. It was set and it was based, of course, on Greek mythology, and that made me really laugh. I had a lot of fun with that, because way back in 2009, at the beginning of 2009, when somebody had started a very premature speculation thread on the vault, in November of 2008 actually, and going off of what J. Michael Roddy had said about classic, I decided that serious speculation at such an early time as January or February was, well, you couldn't seriously speculate, and so I decided I would ludicrously speculate, ridiculously, ha 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 ha, and I made a silly joke about classic, being the pedant and professor that I am, that the word classic actually originally meant pertaining to ancient Greece and Rome, and that, taking that literally, there would be classical themed house. It would be based on Greek mythology, and what would be better than Hades, of course, for Greek mythology, a house set in the underworld of Greek mythology, the domain of the dead, ruled over by the god of the same name, Hades, who, with his 2 brothers, Zeus and Poseidon, they split up the universe between them, Zeus ruling the world of men and the sky and the living, Poseidon taking the seas, the oceans, and Hades taking the lands of the dead. See, that's the neat idea. So it would be filled in the lands of the dead with all the sinister subterranean horrors and creatures of Greek mythology. What fun! And that was just a laugh, a joke. It was the first time that one of my jokes turned out to be more serious than funny ultimately when it actually happened. And I had no idea that such a thing was going to happen the following year. So I was so happy to see Hades Gates of Ruin because, oh my God, I joked about that. I never dreamed that would really happen. I never dreamed it because I guess I'm a bit of an intellectual snob. I confess my sins, and I'm afraid that I underestimated the American people and thought that they would be too erudite, too much for them. That the average person would know, you know, Zeus from Dr. Seuss. You know, he wouldn't know anything about this. I totally understood what was going on in the American people. It was a myth apprehension and a big myth take on my part, and very bad puns. Sorry about that. Here she comes, Myth America. No, sorry. Anyway, sorry about that. That was silly. So I have to I ask the forgiveness of all of you out there that I should have remembered there was a Disney film about Hercules, and people knew about Hades and Zeus, and people had probably read those silly books about what's his name, whatever, Percy Jackson. They might have read those books, and they made films of them later on. And I also forgot about something else that has been in popular culture for years, which was very, very appropriate. You see, I did say these were all original houses. They're not officially adapted directly from an IP. But they did take inspiration from certain films and certain popular culture to some degree, taking inspiration, not directly adapting, but in being inspired. And indeed, they were inspired by a whole bunch of wonderful films whose special effects were done by a brilliant genius of cinema, a man named Ray Harryhausen, who has long since passed away, but he had made some wonderful films over the years. Now, this image on the front is from Jason and the Argonauts, a film about Greek mythology, in fact. He's more famous, though, for all his Sinbad movies. He made, lots of those. Sinbad, the Eye of the Tiger, Sinbad and the Golden Voyage, the Seventh Voyage, the Golden Voyage, all of those. And of course, his last great film, Clash of the Titans, which came out in 1981 when I graduated from high school. It was a very wonderful movie. I saw it in the cinemas, and it featured, of course, a story of Perseus, the son of Zeus, and how he faced the Gorgon Medusa with the snaky hair, and and rescued the Princess Andromeda from the Kraken. Oh, that great line! Release the Kraken! And of course, there was the flying horse Pegasus, and all of that neat stuff. Wonderful stuff in that movie. And in 2010, they had remade it into a new film with lots of CGI and 3D, yes. And so that was in the public imagination at that time, and that probably inspired the house. And it did inspire the house quite a bit, because obviously a lot of stuff from both the original Harryhausen films and the more recent Roubaix kind of were there in the house, at least very close to it. So that was kind of had something to do with that. Release the Kraken, yes. So, going on another aside to make the video longer than it should be, it seems to me that the CGI characters in the reboot, they were more realistic technically, but in a lot of ways they didn't have the believability for me that the original ones did. I love those old Harryhausen ones, because those, even though they're made with little models that are very carefully moved by hand, bit by bit, stop motion animation, that somehow seems more believable in a weird way, because there's something to it. There's something about the human touch that it instills into these images on the screen, something that CGI just can't replicate. A sort of personality or feeling, an emotional level. It's more believable on an emotional level. It's not as realistic technically, but emotionally it's more realistic. Soul. That's the good word. Soul. You can't. CGI does not produce soul. Okay? That's my opinion, I guess, because I'm an old fuck. All right. But absolutely, though, they really did. I mean, many other things from those movies, things like Talos here, there were people in the house that looked a lot like that, but the one that was the big giveaway, it was not from, if I can find the picture, it was not from not from one of the Greek films, but actually from one of his Sinbad movies. One of his Sinbad movies, it was, if I can find the guy, I think it might have been from, not Eye of the Tiger, probably Golden Voyage. Here's Golden Voyage. Now let's see, maybe it was Eye of the Tiger. If I can find the critter, where's that? Oh, look at this one. Look at this one. Look at this one. Ha ha! That's from Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. Does that look familiar? Yeah, that right there. When you first saw the house, yeah. And even better, let's see, where is the bastard? That's not him. Where is he? There was a Cyclops in one of those movies. If I can find the Cyclops. Oh dear. I should have picked out the picture before I started the video. It would take too long. I know he's in here somewhere. Is he from the seventh voyage of Sinbad, the original film? Maybe. There's a dragon. Here he is. Oh yeah, there he is. The Cyclops from the seventh voyage of Sinbad. Classic Ray Harryhausen figure. See that picture? Look at that. Look at that. So, these were clearly inspired and appeared in the house, actually. So when you go into the house, Soundstage 23, the first thing you see is something very much like the picture I showed you before, the gates of hell itself, the mouth of Hades, the shape of the god's face, and you go into his mouth, just like a cavern. And they did something there that was they've done recently even better. They've been developing this and getting better at it, and that sort of shadow play where you have silhouette images moving in front of you of a Cyclops dismembering a victim who's scary, and you find yourself in the realm of the Cyclops and the great gigantic creature, just like the picture I showed you with the one horn and the big eye. They modeled the Cyclops directly from the one from the Harryhausen film, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. So the Cyclops, and he's torturing his victims. You know, in the mythology, the Polyphemus from the Odyssey, if you know your Homer, not Simpson, but the original Homer, that was he would devour human flesh. Here he was more like dismembering the bodies and corpses, but also his victims, he did something nasty. He would gouge out one of their eyes. Why should they have two eyes when he's only got one? Yeah, it's a bit of jealousy there or something, a bit of that. And one of those Cyclops, one of the characters, must have known who I was, because one day I'm sure I heard this voice screaming out in a guttural "Doctor" as I went through there. It was quite fun. After that, you go into a sort of corridor where you are greeted by the ferryman who takes you to Hades in the first place, Charon. Some people call him Charon, but they didn't have a sh sound in Greek, in ancient Greek. And Sharon sounds like a sort of heavyset girl who's in the Bill and Ted show. Let me call her a big, beautiful woman, not heavyset. Let's be nice. So she's a big star, actually, of the show the past few years, actually. Some of the best moments in the shows recently were from her, so we have to give her her due. Give her diva. Brava. But getting back to the house I'm talking about, Charon is there, sort of a Grim Reaper figure in black robes, the skeletal face. And one guest who was in front of me on one of my walkthroughs took one look at that thing and said, "Oh, hell no!" and turned around and ran back out of the house. He couldn't take it. I love that. And then you find yourself going into the domain of the Gorgon Medusa, right out of Clash of the Titans. Oh, here's another thing. If you didn't think Clash of the Titans inspired the house in a lot of ways, well, you weren't paying very good attention. Look at the font. Let's see, where is Hades? Hades Gates of Ruin. Look at the font of Hades Gates of Ruin. See that? Now, if you go back and you find a poster for Clash of the Titans, I don't have it on me, the remake, you'll find it's the same damn font. So that's another dead giveaway. But you're going into the realm of Medusa, and you're in a chamber, a cavern with all sorts of artifacts and weapons and what look like statues, but they're not really statues. They're the victims that she has paralyzed and petrified with her stony gaze. And there's some mirrors, and you can see her face in the mirror with the serpentine tresses, and oh my goodness. And then all of a sudden you turn a corner, and there she is, Oh no, you're going to get stoned and it's not even April 20th. But after that, you go through another corridor, which is the domain of the Hydra, the legendary multi-headed serpent of ancient Greek mythology, killed by Hercules. Well, in this case, they only had one head, and you went through a sort of corridor where there's lots of green stuff in your face, and there's scales painted on the wall, look like scales in Greek paintings. And then there's a couple of boo holes, and the snaky head would pop out of one of the boo holes. Puppet. And it wasn't as effective. It was probably the least effective scene in the house, unfortunately. You'd think they'd be able to put in a couple more heads, because, you know, the Hydra has multiple heads. Just one head, what is that about? Maybe they ran out of cash. In fact, that could have been a big problem. The budgetary issues might have caused problems for this whole house and some of the others. We'll get to that when I continue in part 5. So I'll have to continue Hades in part 5. Sorry.